Thank you all for coming tonight. I think Fred really encapsulated what we're going to be talking about, because all the promotions that went out talked about golf and the mind game, client attraction, business development. So because what LIASB does is an educational program, is to help people to grow their business and help their clients also to grow their businesses. First thing is that we want to talk about distractions. How important are distractions? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take some strategies that golfers have used, my golf clients have used, but also have used across both business and sports in a whole wide variety of areas. But to give you an idea of how important and critical distractions are, I just ask you all to sit up straight in your chair. We're going to have a couple of exercises here. Sit up straight in your chair and start to move your right foot clockwise, round and round, round and round, round and round. And while your right foot is going clockwise with your right hand, draw a big number 6 in the air, a great big number 6. You'll notice that your foot went backwards. The fact is, it's not why that happens, but the question is how critical do you have to be with your distractions? So what gets in people's way? Chad Pennington, who was quarterback for the Jets and Dolphins, wrote the foreword to my book, and he said to me that he needed to increase his concentration. And I said to him, okay, what? I said, what gets in your way of concentration? He said, I get distracted. So we're going to look at distractions. But I said, what distracts you? He says, the way I talk to myself. And so it becomes important for people to listen to how they talk to themselves and also control the way they talk to themselves. What I'd like to do is start out by giving you 2 strategies that my athletes use, my business people use, to retain and get back into their concentration mode. I worked with hockey goaltenders for 25 years. And I said to one guy, what's it like when you perform at your best? He said, when I perform at my best, he says, I don't hear any crowds. The puck is the size of a dinner plate and the game moves very slowly. He says, anytime one of those things change, I need to get back into my zone. I said, how do you do that? He said, I kind of hope that it happens. I hope that I get back. And we all know that hope is not a strategy. So let me give you a way, first of all, to retain and get back into your level of maximum focus. Just put your thumb up this way and focus on your thumbnail as if your eyes are a laser. Don't take your eye off your thumbnail. And without moving your eyeballs, and this is important, become aware of what you see out of your right peripheral vision. And now what are you aware of out of your left peripheral vision? If you get all those 3 things together, your thumbnail, what you see on the left, what you're aware of on the right, when you get them all together, you discover that you can't think of anything. And so concentration, I've talked to a guy from the Mets, he said concentration is thinking about absolutely nothing at just the right time. So I'm going to show you how that plays into your golf game, a lot of other variety of situations. But whether you're a golfer or not a golfer, whether you have clients who play golf or not, it becomes important that they are able to perform well in what they're doing. So controlling negative self-talk is interesting. Hopefully everyone received the survey that talked about self-talk. And it's, the question is when you notice, what do you hear yourself saying to yourself when you hear yourself talking to yourself? How important does that become? Because that's the only way you can pick up negative self-talk. Question is, what do you hear yourself saying to yourself? When does it start? Some people will be going to a performance or to a game on Saturday, and they'll start to hear themselves talking to themselves about the game before that. People who are concerned about flying, fear of flying, I'll say to you, when do you start to think about your concern about flying? They said, well, every time I pass the cabinet that's holding my tickets. So the fact is there a way to control that tape that runs on and on and on and on and on? I believe there is. Just try this. Push your tongue up to the roof of your mouth. When your tongue is on the roof of your mouth, you really can't think of anything. And so at any time you want to turn off negative self-talk, you push your tongue up to the roof of your mouth, and that works exceptionally well. I I had a woman who is the mother of one of my clients, and he said to me, he said, "I'd like you, my mother wants to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." I said, I set up an appointment with her to meet her at the Yale Club in the city. And she was about 81, 82, tiny little woman. And she said, "What we're going to talk about, you're not going to tell my son about." I said, "Absolutely not." So I said, "What do you want to have happen?" She says, "Don't promise you won't tell him, but I want to beat my friends at golf." And so it was really a funny conversation that we had. I showed her these strategies. And then one Saturday afternoon, I got a phone call, and I hear this woman on the phone going, I struck a hole down my tongue and roof of my mouth." So it's just really funny the way people will react. But one of the things that happens is all of these strategies are personal. As many people are on this call, and we're expecting about 100 people on the call tonight, I would like you to just imagine there's only two people on the call, you and me. And I'll deal with you and tell you exactly what I tell my private clients, regardless of whether they're in business or sports. So and how does this self-talk work? Why is controlling self-talk important? Frankly, because self-talk contaminates you. It contaminates performance. I've said to people, and this works really well with people who are on Long Island. People up in Massachusetts might not get this picture, but on Long Island, I'll say to somebody, "Listen, if you valet park your car in Manhattan and go out to dinner, and you're on the way to Montauk, and you get in your car and you start to drive to Montauk, and the minute your valet picks up the car, he's got the worst music that you've ever heard in your life on the radio. What do? You turn it off. Well, that's because you have other stations you can change it to. But what you don't do is you don't find yourself halfway to Montauk in Southampton going, this stuff is still playing. The amount of people that you deal with, that your clients deal with, that your kids deal with, that beat themselves up consistently on performance, and that self-talk goes on and on and on, really contaminates their performance. So if there's a way that you can give them to deal with this on a regular basis, they can. And so noise around distractions, what stops it? I'll give you another example. Sometimes you can hear the self-talk. Sometimes it's invisible, though. I had a golfer who said to me, he said, I play, he said, I'm a 12 handicap golfer. I play very well. He said, but I can't play 50 yards in. And I said to him, well, let's look at when you can't play well 50 yards in. But to make a long story short, in the interest of time, he said to me, we discovered that the only time he can't play well 50 yards in is when he's playing against somebody who makes more money than he does. Now, this guy makes high seven figures. He plays in one of the most prominent clubs in Florida. You wouldn't think that this would disturb the guy, but it did. And so the question is the most important thing about it, it was invisible. He never even realized that this was something that was getting in his way. And negative self-talk is critical in that you have to be very, very careful of what you tell yourself. People will tell themselves, I don't want this to happen. If anybody finds themselves telling themselves, and particularly with golf, you tee a ball up over a water hole and you say, I don't want to hit the ball in the water. Where's it going? Likely into the water. So the point is that what validates that? What shows you that this is really critical to performance? Let's come back to the Giants and the Patriots. New England, first game they played, New England Patriots had won 18 straight games. Somebody said to me, who do you think is going to win? And I said, I think that the Patriots are going to find a way to lose. And they said, how can you say that? I said, well, my belief is, and it was validated by Belichick after the game, people will come in and say, we have 18 straight games. We don't want to lose to the Giants. And they found a way to lose. When it came to the second game, second time they played, I said, it's going to be worse. They're going to say, we don't want to lose to them again. But one of the things we look at is if you're playing golf or any sport or involved in any type of a situation, or if your team and the people that work with you are going out saying, I don't want to lose this sale. I don't want this to happen. That's not a positive message to send, because your golf game, your lacrosse game, your hockey game, your gymnastics are all in your subconscious mind. Your performance is in your subconscious mind. But your subconscious mind never hears a negative command. It never hears a negative command. And so it's risky for you or for your team, or if you're playing golf, to use negative comments when you're talking to stuff. It's important to have a positive tape. One of the positive tapes that I have people use, and I have a card, but I haven't been able to hand cards out now because of COVID. But on the back of my business card has a statement that says, every day, in every way, I get better and better and better. People use that and repeat that 10 times a night, 60 days straight, just before they go to sleep. Because the last thing you think about before you go to sleep is repeated over and over by your subconscious mind. And so taking advantage of that, letting them use that on a particular basis, works very well for people. I have a client in Ireland who ran, and this makes the connection between mind game and business performance. I had a guy who ran Ireland for Hewlett Packard at a conference I was at in Geneva. And he said to me, we were working on personal performance for Hewlett Packard. But he said to me, he said, I'm a 3 handicap golfer. He said, I'm going into a golf tournament in my club with 2 or 3 guys who I think really can beat me and embarrass me. And he said, I wonder if you could help me with that. And I said to him, I said, why don't you give me a list? I was heading back to New York. I said, why don't you give me a list of the things you do that you hear yourself saying to yourself? He says, that's garbage. So I didn't hear from him for about 3 weeks. He came back to me and he said to me, let me tell you what happened. He said, it got so bad that I went up to these guys on a putting green before we started. And I said, I hope you're not going to have a problem playing with a lousy golfer. He said, so I didn't do very well in that round. He said, but what really concerned me is I was on the way to a multi-million-dollar business negotiation in Europe for Hewlett Packard. And I heard myself saying to myself, I don't want these guys to get over on me. I don't want these guys to beat me down. And so it's how he had to prepare to compete that became really, really very important. So we know one thing in sports, trash talk really works very well. Some sports more than others, but the most effective trash talk is a trash talk that people use on themselves. I have a variety of clients, and I tell them, particularly student athletes, is when you start with me, I have one rule. You need my permission to beat yourself up. You can't beat yourself up until you call me and ask me if it's okay. And it's never okay. So with that in mind, I want to come back to when we start to talk about focus and concentration. And we had a great example over the last weekend with Phil Mickelson winning the game that he won, his championship. But I want to read a comment of an interview that he had. He said, part of the secret sauce for Mickelson last week at the PGA was finding ways, he says, to quiet my mind and get rid of all exterior noise. All week at the PGA, he seemed in a zen-like state. He walked slowly. When speaking to reporters, he was so dialed into the moment that he avoided addressing the possibilities and consequences of what he would end up doing on Sunday, which was make history. Those state trooper mirrored shades he was wearing of late, an hour after his win in a quiet moment outside Queen's Course Clubhouse, before he would leave the property and fly home to celebrate with his wife, somebody asked him about the glasses. He wears those sunglasses because they help him deflect the distractions and allow him to close my eyes when he needs a moment to calm amid the storm. We forget that high-profile star athletes like Mickelson, Brady, LeBron James, to name a superstar, on camera almost every moment of wherever event in which they're competing. Mickelson is transparent in admitting that he can get caught up in the madness and has been determined to his performance, detrimental to his performance. So he made a concerted effort to quiet the noise. Quieting the noise is incredible for athletes. I've spoken to some gymnasts recently who talk about the noise in an arena that's distracting. And so what do? We create a bubble that somebody steps into where they don't hear anything. Noise disappears. Can you control the noise? Absolutely. But the question is, how do you do it? What kind of strategies do you use to make that happen? The other thing is preparation for competition. What does preparation for competition look like today, whether it's in business or in sports? My football players prepare to a tremendous degree. So do my baseball players and most of the athletes I work with. People in business find sometimes that younger sales teams tend to wing performance. And I suggest that people prepare like the pros. And I'll give you an example. My best example of preparation for competition is the Super Bowl III. I said that Dave Herman protected Bubba Smith, protected Joe Namath from Bubba Smith. And he said, I said to him, how did you do that? I said, you're 6'2", 250. Bubba Smith is 6'7", 365. He said, I watch game films. Now I'm thinking he's watching for formations. And he says, no. He said, I figure when a guy that big has got to move forward, he has to be standing on 1 foot just a little bit longer than everybody else. He said, so I never waited till the ball was snapped. I just waited till his toe came up. And when his toe came up, I knew I was going to catch him on 1 foot every time. So here's a guy with 4 quarters and numerous downs to win a game. And he prepares to that degree. How do people go out and win a presentation? How do they not profile who they're going to speak to? How do they not arrange the same way you would prepare on a golf course? So if we come back to the survey, and hopefully everybody got it, but if you didn't, you can let us know. We'll get you one. I want to come back to how you play a golf game. And you can kind of think about this. Do you talk to your golf clubs, or do your golf clubs talk to you? I believe your clubs talk to you. So what you do sometimes is, and a way to have fun with this is put your golf bag in the middle of the room, pick your clubs up one at a time, and write down on your survey what the clubs say to you when you touch them. There's on the list is a driver, 3-wood, 5-wood, irons, other clubs that you may have in your bag. But what do they say to you before you touch them? How important is it to understand what that happens? I did a program for a women's golf association about 10 years ago. And there were about 300 women there. And I said, okay, I said, imagine you pick your driver up. Does anybody want to tell me what your driver says to you when you hold it in your hand? And they says, no, not in public. So it became very interesting how much this happens. But if you go down your clubs, you know, before you pick a club up, what's going to happen, what kind of conversation you're going to have with yourself. Survey also has you come back to your home course. So if you went down a course that you normally play, what does each hole say to you? Some holes are more lenient than others, but you got to play that hole based on what your conversation is. But it's noticing the conversation and being able to shut it off when you need to. How do you do that? And that comes back into the same thing with business situations. How many people prepare for a business situation, for a business networking meeting, a networking event? What are they going to say to themselves? What type of conversation do they need to have when they're talking to the particular group that they're talking to? It becomes important to do that. Are there particular shots that you have in your golf game? Now, I'm going to show you in just a minute how to practice without ever going onto a golf course. Because I have clients right now who practice gymnastics without ever going into a gym, who practice baseball without ever going onto a baseball field, and who practice golf. So power visualization is a very, very valuable tool when you use it. So let me show you how it works. If everybody just wants to close your eyes and imagine that the inside of your eyelids are flat screen TVs. Take a shot that you want to make. Let's say you have a ball that's in the sand and you want to practice that shot. You can think about it cognitively, or you can really take yourself back to watching yourself in a sand trap. So the way to do that is very simple. You just keep your eyes closed and you count backwards from 5 to 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Imagine that you're walking along a beach. The water is coming up on the beach. And when you look down in the wet sand, you see a number 5 scratched there. And as you look up the beach, you see a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1 scratched in the sand. As you're watching the number 5, a little wave comes up, crosses over the 5, and when the wave goes back into the ocean, the 5 disappears. And you notice that your relaxation is doubled or maybe even tripled. You walk up to the 4, the same thing happens. The wave comes up, goes back in, and as you proceed up the beach and as the numbers disappear, you find your relaxation doubling or tripling. You may even be surprised to notice right now how much you know that you didn't know that you knew about your mind's ability to relax your body. So when you get into a place where you can imagine yourself sitting in front of a flat screen TV, sit down, turn the TV on, and watch yourself in the sand trap. Throw 10 balls in, watch yourself with a perfect swing, with ball lifting out up onto the green, coming up close to the flag. Do that over, do it again, do it again, do it again. And ultimately what happens is your subconscious mind sees the perfect shot out of the sand. Now, I have a person who has been working with me for years, and he said to me, I practice golf every day on a Long Island Railroad going to work. I pick a different shot, and I'll practice that shot through the whole trip into the city. Puts his sunglasses on, puts a baseball hat on, pulls it down over his eyes, and all of that distraction disappears. So power visualization is absolutely incredible. Can you use it? I expect people to be skeptical about what I'm saying today. And skepticism is a wonderful tool to have when you control it. When it controls you, it can become a problem. So I'm going to suggest that you decide that you're going to be skeptical about everything that I'm saying here, probably on November 15th. But between now and then, just know that you're going to be skeptical in November. Now, how does this work for people? Jeff Weiner had invited a client of his to an event I did at the Yale Club some years ago. And everybody left. And about 5, 6 weeks later, I got a call. And a guy said to me, I have to apologize. I said, what are you apologizing for? He said, well, when I left with Jeff, I said to him, I have never heard more BS in my life than I heard when I heard Dan Schaefer talking about this stuff. He says, and then in the last 5 weeks, he says, my golf game is dramatically improved. I played very well. And you know, you don't even have to, people just have to decide, am I going to use this or not? I was at a Christmas party and a guy came up to me and he said, you know, I have to thank you for the best year of golf I ever had in my life. I said, thank you. I said, but I don't know you. He says, no. He says, I was in a cart next to you while you were explaining yourself to the guys you were playing with. And he said, I don't know whether they did, but I did. You know, so it worked for me. So the question is how does this stuff work? It works for a variety of reasons. One of the things that happens, and you know, we mentioned about client attraction, business development. I think it's important to address that because there were some people here who were invited because they're golfers. There are other people who were invited because they're just business associates of people who play golf. John Comack, who's one of our sponsors, is putting together a whole business golf program for golfers to improve their business and meet. Jeff Weiner does the same thing. So I think that the way this all works is important because one of the comments that I get from business clients is that, you know, with COVID and even before COVID, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, we need to get in front of more people. And the question is how do you get in front of more people? What's the strategy? Is there a formula? Well, there is a formula. the formula is that you can either try to get in front of more people, or you can bring all those people to you. Now, Everbank in New Jersey decided they wanted to get a higher profile with Xerox in Virginia. And so what they said was that, how can we do that? And when we talked to Xerox, and I said, what are your challenges? And I said, we can't get our sales teams in past gatekeepers. We need to find a way to get into past gatekeepers. I said, well, why would you deal with people who can't make a decision rather than go right to the CEOs of the company? And I said, well, the CEO is not going to come. He's going to send somebody else, particularly to a tech company like HP, like Xerox. He said, I said, yeah, but what if you go right to the CEO? He's not going to send somebody else, particularly if you promise him strokes off his golf game. So long story short, we had 200 CEOs in 2 days that came into that environment. What was also interesting was they had a particular message. The message that I've worked with some people on, the fact that what many of us on this call do really is sell mistakes, help people avoid making really, really costly error. And so, you know, when I talk to somebody about Jeff Weiner or John Comack, I'll say to them, you know, when you're talking to these guys, they will tell you everything that they will not let you do if you retain them as a person to do your project. So it becomes important to do that. So he said to me, he said, but I can't speak to my Rotary Club. He said, would you mind come to us? Would you mind speaking to my Rotary Club for me? Now, this is very interesting. I was telling somebody about this morning. It was down in Manassas, Virginia. So I went to the Rotary Club. There were 80 members of the Manassas Chamber of Commerce. And I spoke to them about sports performance, the different things I do with different kind of athletes, student athletes, dealing with parents of student athletes and all that. But at the very end, the guy said to me, Dan, how long have you been here from Alabama with that accent you have? I said, this is clearly Brooklyn. Come on. So in any event, he said to me, but I said, you might want to understand how I got together with Xerox. I said, because both of us sell mistakes. They have a list of mistakes that they will not let you happen. It may make sense for you to reach out to them and find out the things they will not let you do if you retain them as a client. So everyone here, the people who are sponsors on this program, have lists of things that they will tell you that they won't let you do. And it's a lot easier to talk to Jeff about what he won't let you do with your insurance, and John, if rather than make the mistake and have to pay the expense afterwards. Now, people ask me, how do people know when to call me? Now, I'm kind of reluctant sometimes to use this, but I think it really kind of fits in. People will say to me, I say, you know, if you want to know when to call me, just imagine a big fan packed with wet manure and a guy with a plug by an outlet. I want you to call me before he puts the plug in the wall. How many of you have all dealt with people after the fan has been plugged in? I know the lawyers have, almost everybody has. And so if what we're really about, and I think this is what LIASB is about on a more significant level, is it helps people with the tools, provide them with the tools and strategies to avoid making really, really costly error. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to be open for any questions that you guys may have. Questions become very interesting, and I just want to address questions because maybe you confront this yourself in your own practice. I find it that sometimes in presentations, people will not ask questions. They won't ask questions publicly. You might give a presentation to a group and they may ask you no questions. And I discovered that doing a program for hockey goaltenders. I spoke to 95 hockey goaltenders. And I said to them, I did this clinic. I said, what questions do you have? And there were no questions. And at the end of the presentation, I had 40 kids along the line on the wall saying to me, I would never ask a question in front of somebody who I'm competing with. So it's how you get questions. And then it's important, if you really want great answers, you have to have great questions, but you have to ask the right people. So many people ask questions to the wrong people. So with all of this in mind, on my website is a whole lot of information about many of these mind game strategies. Certainly, I can reinforce this when we go into these breakout rooms if I run into you. And if anybody has a question about how do you apply this to your golf game or your business, feel free to give me a call and I'll be happy to talk to you about it.